Welcome to the Informed Pregnancy and Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, pregnancy-focused chiropractor, Dr. Elliot Berlin. My guest today is an executive coach, author, partner, parent, and creator of Welcome to Fatherhood, a special niche within his executive coaching business, especially for new dads. David Arrell, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dr. Berlin. Looking forward to being here with you today and sharing some of our conversation with you and your illustrious audience.
Oh, thank you. I'm fascinated by the whole business idea, lifestyle of coaching, and I want to learn all about it in general and especially for dads. But let's start at the beginning. Where are you from originally?
Long time ago, I was born in Chicago, so grew up mostly in Louisville, Kentucky area. But I say I came of age and I'm from Philadelphia, as that's where I spent a big chunk of my early adulthood, where I gained a lot of good experience and all the ways of trying to figure out how to live a life of meaning, purpose, and intentionality. So that's my formative years were mostly in Philadelphia.
If I grew up in Philadelphia, I would have gained a lot of weight from all the great food.
That happens too.
Cheesesteaks. Okay. How did you get into executive coaching? And really, what does it even mean?
So I think the shortest answer to that question is executive coaching really comes down to helping high-performing people, such as executives, take their both personal and professional performance, depending on how you want to measure that, and take it up to that next level. It's sort of what Carol Dweck calls the growth mindset embodied. So for people who are doing good, how do we get to great? For people who are doing great, how do we get to being awesome? And one of the things I like most about that is that every situation, every client is a unique person that has their unique aspirations, their unique ideals, goals, challenges, and helping them find their way through it in ways that work best for them is really what I enjoy most about it. So I have a lot of, tools in my toolbox, but it always comes down to the client's, willingness to dig in and put in the work, much like parenting and fatherhood.
Carol Dweck, so she's a psychologist, right? Is there a school of executive coaching?
There's a lot of different certifications you could pursue, trainings, workshops, modules. And then, frankly, in my experience, a lot of it comes down to experiential knowledge. I feel that I have some great certifications that help me frame questions or frame approaches in specific ways. But honestly, my background is as an entrepreneur, as a parent, as a partner, and being a bit stubborn. I learned a lot of things the hard way, such as, banging my head into a wall 4 or 5 times before I realized there was either a door or a window, and then finding that way to get through. So it really draws upon my background in entrepreneurship, leadership training and development, and then my experience trying to be the best dad and the best partner I can be. And failing a lot. Learning and failing, they go hand in hand.
Is failing, maybe the opposite order, failing and learning from our fails, sort of how we climb the ladder of success?
Exactly. I always say if the 10th version is going to be great, let's fail 9 times fast and learn and adapt and iterate and bring that next version of ourselves or of our strategy or of our process to bear in the real world and see how it goes. So this iterate, learn, iterate again. And again, this applies perfectly to parenthood because babies and pregnancy every day is a new chapter. So there's a lot of opportunities to realize that what worked, quote unquote, yesterday may not work as well today, just like in business as in life.
Yeah, I just feel like as soon as I understood the infant stage, they were toddlers, and then it kept going like that. Okay, cool. So your role to parenthood, your pathway to parenthood, what was that like for you?
At the time, I thought I was set up for success. I had sold a business. My wife and I were very intentional about heading into parenthood. We were trying to start a family. She was embarking on a second chapter in her professional career. The plan was for me to stay home and be the stay-at-home dad. And we got pregnant kind of right away. So my pseudo retirement from stepping out of the C-suite into the nursery was a very short time there. And we were all on board. We signed up for some birth classes. I really aspired to be a great partner, a great dad. And yet I found myself so lost, so confused and bewildered. And obviously, my wife is an amazing person, but her journey into pregnancy towards childbirth was also an unknown for her. So we're kind of both, grasping in the dark of like, what do we do? And trying to really engaged the learning opportunities we had, as well as staying connected to what I call sometimes the cultural conveyor belt of you just sign up for your OBGYN and you go to the appointments and you do all the things as prescribed. So it was a delicate dance of us, sort of following the tide, but also trying to figure out how to swim on our own. So I'll pause there because there's a lot of wrinkles and deviations that occur.
Yeah, I mean, if I could go back to you, young David, thinking about fatherhood, was your vision stay-at-home dad like?
This is a funny question that my friends to this day are still bewildered because young David had zero intentions of entering into fatherhood and worked assiduously to avoid what at the time appeared to be a trap. Uh, so, uh,
Relationships?
just as a young person, my vision of fatherhood was a different chapter I wasn't ready for. I liked going out to eat dinner at 9 o'clock, and I liked sleeping in, and I liked being, footloose and fancy free, as did many people in my age group, especially, in Philadelphia in the early 2000s. It was a happening town with a lot going on, and friends that had babies, soon enough, they disappeared from the social scene. And then, a few years later, they left the city entirely. And I was like, well, I'm not ready for that. I like this particular chapter of my life, and I'm not ready for it to come crashing to a halt. But slightly less young David in a relationship that I felt really engaged in and excited about and invested in, that was a radical change. I was very ready to start a family with my now wife. And she'll tell a funny story at times where she was coming home from somewhere and had decided that on that drive home that she was ready to have kids with me. And she came home and she was like, David, I want to tell you something. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. She's like, I decided I want to have kids with you. And I was like, okay, great. She was like, not really the reaction I was looking for. And I was like, what? And she was like, I don't know. I just thought that would be more impactful. I was like, oh, babe, I've known I wanted to have kids with you forever now. I'm excited to
Oh,
hear that. I'm slightly more emotionally intelligent than I was then, but still I'm about a 2 on a scale of 0 to 10 of emotional intelligence. So I kind of missed the seriousness or sincerity of where she was coming from. But my honest appraisal was like, okay, good. That's 2 of us. This is awesome. So a
hmm.
big shift from young David to more contemporary David there.
Sweet. But it just sounds like that David was very hands-on from the beginning, either that conversation or soon before that, in terms of taking on the role of father and partner and caretaker.
Yeah, I've often looked at my life, especially in hindsight, as a series of chapters. And there's been, threads of continuity, but also very different. And this was a chapter of my life that I was entering into, and I was very excited about it. I mentioned I wanted to be a really good partner. I was all in on the relationship, and I wanted to be all in on partnership and parenthood. Little did I know what that meant at the time. And, we got on our pregnancy journey. And as I often joke about, I was like, okay, what do I do? I'm used to action, and, with my business, you have a business plan, you have strategy, you have KPIs, you're executing initiatives, et cetera. So I was like, okay, operation expectant dad, what do I do? Like, oh, just be helpful and supportive. I'm like, well, yeah, that's why I'm standing here asking what to do. Like, you didn't answer my question. Oh, just be helpful and supportive. Your partner's pregnancy is a journey. And I'm like, okay, is there somebody else I can talk to? Like, you haven't really told me anything yet.
Yeah, it doesn't boil down to spreadsheets the same way as business might. I think that probably happens to a lot of people, dads in particular, maybe more so. How did you remedy that? What did you do to prepare?
So thankfully, we have 2 children. So I was able to do things so much better the second time around. But with our first, and I often share the story, like when my wife saw our positive pregnancy test, she went into mom mode. Like, we celebrated, and she started getting rid of like different cleaning products and was like checking which cheeses we could keep, whatever. I didn't see it this clearly as I do now. And I'm sure there's more clarity to come as I have more experience. But I was like, great, I'm going to be a dad much later than now. And so in my mind, fatherhood was still well beyond the horizon, about 7 months over
Yeah.
the horizon. And so that disconnect of the journey I was on, which is going to become a father, and the journey she was on, which is I'm a mom now, I am taking care of our baby now. Those 2 different journeys, I didn't realize. Obviously, I knew I wasn't pregnant, so it wasn't completely obtuse. But the extent of the difference of our journeys was something I did not appreciate at all during the first pregnancy. I was very like, oh, okay, I'll be a dad later. And she's like, I'm a mom now. Like, I remember I didn't get her a Mother's Day card during when she was pregnant during
Ah,
Mother's Day. Lesson learned, guys, if your partner's expecting, get her a Mother's Day card.
the
And then she
great
got me a
debate.
Father's Day card. And I'm like, I'm not a dad yet. Like, you wouldn't get me a Christmas card at Thanksgiving, would you? Like, again, I failed spectacularly and often. And those were one of many incidences where I did not appreciate what my role was as a supportive partner when it came to understanding I was actually fathering then, even if I didn't understand it, which was that gap was challenging.
Yeah, it's a great point. And honestly, with my first kid, we have four. And with my first kid, I felt the exact same way that you just described during pregnancy, early and middle pregnancy. I actually have a blog, my own personal blog, that sort of mixes my life observations with what I do professionally. And it's called Expectations. And in, I think, the second installment of Expectations is called Scrambled Expectations, because it wasn't until this is pre-Instacart and all that stuff. I was in the supermarket with my shopping list and I was buying eggs and milk and checking the dates. And I realized, oh my goodness, these expire after the due date. Like, this could be breakfast once he's here. And it just blew my mind. I'm like, stuff just got real.
Right.
And of course, my wife, it had been real for much, much longer. And then, like 2 minutes later, I'm holding a baby. I'm like, what do I do with it? What do I do with it? Okay, let's take a little break. When we come back, we'll find out how your less prepared experience with having a kid went, and then how your better prepared experience went. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking to David Arrell, executive coach and creator of Welcome to Fatherhood. All right, let's talk about your first kid. So you don't know anything, apparently, and you don't feel like a dad, and you're expecting a child. Do you guys, as a couple, do you as an individual, do things to get ready for the birth? Any kind of research or planning, or, if you're used to having business plans, is there a birth plan, that kind of thing?
So, yeah, we took a great birth class together, the Bradley birth class, like, husband focused birth class. So that was the point. Cause my wife knew. She was like, this guy doesn't know what's going on. So she's like, do you want to take a birth class? I'm like, yeah. I mean, I don't know what I would possibly need to know about giving birth, but sure, I'm down for it. Again, not really understanding. And there was a lot of great comfort measures and bonding time together and kind of being in that pregnancy space together. And it was spread. It was, I think, 12 sessions every 2 weeks forever. And we got a chance to make some great relationships with other couples that are in the same, part of the journey as we are. All of our due dates were within like 6 or 8 weeks together. So that was great. And then there was this different birth class offered through her employer that we took together and met some other couples. And it was a little bit more medically focused, which was also great. And yet, in spite of all that, I still was operating the sense of like, well, I'm not having a baby. So, I mean, what am I going to learn in birth class besides like how to massage your back? Again, bad mindset or unwise mindset. And then when it came to birth plan, it was sort of the same thing. Like, I don't know these things. Like, we definitely wanted to go as kind of like natural as possible. And so we were going for like the no meds, low intervention approach. And we were both very clear about that. That was our preference. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't know how strongly I'm supposed to advocate for you not getting pain meds if you're in a lot of pain. So I was very happy to be the co-pilot, and whatever you want, I'm down for. And that was kind of the extent of my preparation. I did read a little bit, like most first time expectant dads. I noticed a pile of books on my nightstand that I didn't buy that showed up for me. So I had some great, dad type books, but a lot of them were a little bit too much of like the boobs and beer jokes. Like, I did not want to get a medical degree in birth. And some of the books were like 3 inches thick. I'm like, I don't need to know when the eyelashes are growing. Great, cool, awesome. That's got zero practical value to me. And some of the other ones. So again, I felt like I was doing as best I could, but I didn't feel like I was given good guidance that was going to really bring forth my better, best ways of connecting with my partner and supporting her and being prepared for the actual childbirth. So it was a combination of, our culture was, I didn't feel super supportive for dads like me who really want to do a good job. But then also I wasn't showing up, I felt, with hindsight, with would have been a better mindset, which I felt I could have cultivated if I got a little bit more direct clear, hey, David, do this, or David, don't do this. So
This is
I
all.
do better with specifics.
I'm generalizing, but I find like men like to have solutions for problems. And sometimes there is no solution or they're just not looking for, a fix, but just support. And then also, there was this whole era in the United States, especially where husbands weren't allowed into the birthing room. And it almost seems like overnight it was like, okay, you're allowed in and you're the coach.
Right. And catch the
And
baby and cut the
I think,
cord.
yeah, exactly. And Jim Gaffigan, I'm loosely quoting him saying, yeah, I was the birth coach, which basically means standing there terrified, not having a clue what I could do. And I think that's how a lot of people end up feeling. I think that's how a lot of dads end up feeling in particular. So going into that first birth, who was going to be there? Who was the birth team?
Thankfully, we had an OB that was one of my wife's coworkers. She's a pediatric nurse practitioner in her office. She's in the Air Force. There was a medical group. So she had an OB that she was friends with and was known for having a very natural birth supportive approach. And so he was there. We had a doula, one of my favorite people in the world, all doulas. I strongly recommend any guy out there on the fence, dude, hire a doula. I mean that in the most direct and clear way I can possibly say it. And
I
she was
wanted two
there.
doulas, one for my wife and one for me.
See, that's smart right there. That's the 4 kid learning right there, right?
Yeah, well, they have all this cool stuff, the kids. They have that Papa's swing and all these different cool toys that they get to play with. But the one thing that they really get is, well, it's going to sound weird, but the nanny, and I just mean it like this, like someone to be like, oh, you're hungry? Let me make you a sandwich. You know what? You look tired. Why don't you take a nap? That just sounds like the life. That would be my dream. If I can have one thing my kid has, that would be it. Okay, so the doula, though, yeah, agreed, invaluable to me.
I can share more about her later. So we had main people there that were our team were the preferred OB/GYN and our doula. And then me wrongly imagining my job was to like protect the room. And so, we read some of these, expectant parents, they kind of seem to be a magnet for like terrible stories. I was all keyed up about like, I need to watch this, I need to watch that. As it turns out, that's not at all my job. My job is to be 100% attentive to my partner and present with her, and a calm, grounding influence is what I learned, and then was able to show up that way the second time. But that was our birth team. And then there was a variety of nurses that were coming and going. And that birth was really scary for all of us.
How so?
So apparently my son, his skull was lined up not fully correct.
With the runway?
With the cervix, asynclitic. And so she was pushing, my wife was pushing, and our baby wasn't progressing. And then her cervix started swelling. So we had to like not push.
Yeah.
And so our OB/GYN is trying to like, get them lined up correctly. And the whole time, like my wife is in a state, she's giving birth. She's not fully present. We had the low intervention. So she didn't have like a lot of stuff on her, but she was starting to hyperventilate. So trying to put an oxygen mask on her, and she was like fighting it off, and she couldn't hear what anybody was saying. So she kept looking at me like, what do I need to do? I can't do this. I can't do this. It's too hard. And she'd been pushing for a while. And then finally, like the baby was progressing, but then I could see my OB/GYN who was like super calm the whole time, but now he's like very attentive and he's sweating, and they firing up like a warmer in the corner, and the room started getting really busy. And I'm like, bleep, like I am stressing. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who I'm supposed to pay attention to. Like clearly there's energy building and there's concern building, and my wife's freaking out and I'm like freaking out. And my doula came in with a hand on my shoulder, like the angel that she was, like, David, you pay attention to Jen. I will let you know if you need to do anything else. And at that moment, like I felt all that stress come out of my system. And I looked at my wife, at Jen. I was like, hey, babe, I'm right here. We're good. And then she relaxed a little bit. And within a few minutes, our son was born. But when he was born, he had kind of like passed out from like being squeezed in the canal. So they put him right on her chest, but he was kind of gray and a little bit limp. And Kevin, our OB/GYN, is like, we need to cut the cord. I'll give you a minute. He needs to start moving in a minute. And like all the birth team is around it. Again, they got the warmer fired up. The NICU people are all coming in, and like we're freaking out. Like, oh no, she's like, oh baby, baby, baby. And she's like rubbing his back. And then like he starts to turn pink and he kind of starts waking up. And then everybody like relaxed. But for that, like, I don't know, 5 15 minutes of when everything just was getting really intense to where he came out and came around and came to and everybody relaxed. I think I burned 8 million calories in that short period of time. It was very, very tense and
uh,
very stressful.
Even just you retelling it made my heart rate go up.
I know, man. I'm stressing out, and he's way past that point now.
Yeah. Wow, that is scary. At this point, everybody came out okay.
Everybody came out okay. Everything was fine. He got pink and squirmed and cuddled and smiled, and everything was good. They turned off the warmer. They all chilled out. We had our nice golden hour. My wife will tease me because after everything settled down, I'm skin to skin with him. I got my baby on my chest and I'm holding him, and she's laying there. I'm like, I kind of sense things are cool. Our doula has like left the room, giving us some space. I'm like, babe, I know you just had a baby, but can I sit down? My legs are killing me. I'm really tired. And
This has
she
been
just started
hard on
laughing.
me.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I've been working hard over here. So I lay down, and she got a great picture, or Dula got a great picture of like me, like half asleep with my son naked on my naked chest, and just like really feeling into the reality of fatherhood. Like at that point, I became a father. Like I remember after he was born, just bursting into tears of like joy and just emotional appreciation. Like I told my wife, I'm like, wow, you are my hero. You did all of this and no meds. And here we are. Now we're a family. We're all here together. And she's like, I've been a mother this whole time, but she was like, we really were able to bask in that moment once the tension subsided and we were all like fully present and connected in that new family space of all three being together for the first time.
Such a beautiful story, although the tense moments in there, I definitely, so many times I've been in that position where someone came over to me and said, just focus on your partner. And also, I was a doula for many years. And so, you could see sometimes after a tense moment like that at a birth, sometimes the mom is just 100% fine and dad is traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's going to comfort him and help him realize that everything is now okay. So sometimes you get a redo.
Thankfully, yes.
And I assume that's the only reason you had another child to try again.
Well, the second pregnancy, so I'd been taking notes all along of like, what are the things I wish people told me to like save me the multiple head banging on the wall to like, just tell me where the window is. Cause I'm not just trying to, do things the wrong way here. So I've been taking various notes, which led to Welcome to Fatherhood of like recommendations for myself or my buddies who were going to have a pregnancy behind me. And so the second pregnancy came around. I'm like, okay, I am ready. And if you ask my wife, I'm sure there's several places per trimester that I did not show up as I wanted to be, but I spent a lot less time struggling to figure out how to support my partner. We had been through this journey together before, so I had better appreciation of her sensitivity of smells and better appreciation for her energy levels. As I would often joke to myself, my wife is not a zebra. You can't just have a baby and pop up and run and join the crowd. Human pregnancy is much different in a lot of ways than the rest of mammalia, especially with the postnatal, that last fourth trimester outside the body. The human skull and human pelvis evolutionary battle has met a truce where you get 3 months of continued development outside the body. So that fourth trimester in particular, I was much more, we had a doula. We actually had two doulas the second time around. And I had
Oh,
zero
my
worry.
dream, one for you and one for your wife.
Yeah, well, they were both for her, but one was more doing photography slash
Ah,
doula.
a
But the
photo
other
doula.
one was a trusted friend who was a doula also, who had taught us. We had taken a hypnobirthing course, and she became our doula also. So I felt that we had an awesome team, and we had our same OBGYN. Kevin was there again, amazing. And I fully settled into my role as to be partner. And the birth mantra I was sharing with myself was be attentive, be calm, and then if necessary, be competent. You mentioned earlier, us guys try to get in this like fixing mode or doing mode. And hence the mantra is be attentive, be calm, and then be competent, whether it's holding a leg, wiping a brow, getting some water, staring lovingly into my partner's eyes, just being present. But I found I had to be attentive and calm first in order to allow whatever I was going to do happen with more competence than otherwise. So I felt I was so much more connected and present with her. And our daughter Our son was like 7 pounds, 12. Our daughter was 9
Woo!
pounds, 11 ounces. And that birth went much easier than
Yeah.
our son, mainly, I
Well,
feel,
I think
because both of
being
us were
not,
settled in, you know?
yeah, true. Also not being asynclitic and also being the second birth.
Hmm.
Uh, wow. I'm glad it went better.
No flashing lights, no warmers firing up. I mean, my wife was sweating plenty, but the rest of us were maintaining that cool, calm vibe. And just everything just went, so much smoother.
Yeah, so it sounds like a more peaceful way to get started in life. Okay, let's take another break because when we come back, I want to find out more about the work that you're doing and the life lessons that you're learning and how you're using them to help others. By the way, that's the whole purpose of telling birth stories on informed pregnancy, so we can learn from things that you wish people had told you earlier. We're trying to do that. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking to father of two, David Arrell. So you put together two things. One is your executive coaching mind, and two is all the things you've learned from going through the different stages of pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum, parenting, and then rinse and repeat. And now you're trying to help others. Tell me about Welcome to Fatherhood. What does it offer? How does it access?
Sure. So, Welcome to Fatherhood, the acronym there is WTF, which some people take to mean
I skipped it. I didn't get it right away.
take to mean other things, which I feel is an adequate acronym for many moments of the expectant to new father journey. What I've put together is a series of what I call dad tips, which are specific pointers. Like I mentioned previously, dude, hire a doula. That's dad tip number 7 in the
DHD,
book.
DHAD, DHAD.
Uh-huh. And then there's some big ideas, which really I'm more of a thinking kind of person. So the big ideas are ways to think about things differently, such as I mentioned, I did not appreciate the extent of the different journeys my pregnant wife was on compared to the one I was on as an expectant father. So that is big idea number 1. You are on very different journeys. She is a mom now, and you are not. And so appreciate this journey and build bridges across the journey rather than trying to be on the same journey with her. And all of these things, what I wanted to do is I wanted to be very clearly connected to the sincerity slash seriousness of aspiring expectant dads, like where I was. Like I really want to do a good job. I was showing up very earnest, but I didn't want to get too far into only that side. So I tried to bring a lot of humor, a lot of not sarcasm, but like, I share many of my mistakes with them, like, don't pull the Dave here. Don't do this. Don't ask your wife to wake you up if she's certain these are the real contractions. I did that.
No.
I did
Oh,
that during the first pregnancy. I did not do that on the second night of the first pregnancy, nor on the second pregnancy at all. So I should do not do that. But
you
it's
either
put,
have to not do that or get a much more comfortable futon.
exactly. There's a lot of places that are not comfortable that you can talk yourself into, but you cannot talk yourself out of, as it turns out, in the fatherhood journey. So yeah, put that stuff together. I beta tested it with our second pregnancy in the sense of I just referring to my notes to remind myself what to do and not to do. I started offering some in-person workshops around the material. COVID happened, and so we were moving from one state to another. So I put it together in book form, and that's the Welcome to Fatherhood book that led to the book. I did the audio myself. So as I mentioned, coming into full adulthood in Philadelphia, there's a little salt and pepper in the language. So the audiobook is explicit. The WTF gets fully
Doesn't
articulated.
stand for where's the food?
At times it does, but there's a little bit more energy in that question. And just recently, I finally finished getting the video course version put together because just a lot of guys, like me, just aren't going to read a lot of those books on your nightstand that find their way there from your partner or well-meaning friends. Who has time to read 7 books and then like figure out which ones are worth paying attention to? So now there's the video series available, a bunch of 6 or 8 minute videos kind of going through each of the dad tips and big ideas one at a time to be kind of taken at an easier pace. So it's offered in the sense it's put together with like, you're busy, you really want to do a good job. You want some clarity, some directness. So it's kind of organized by trimester. There's a whole breakdown of childbirth, of what does it mean to be attentive during early labor versus the transition versus the actual delivery of baby and then delivery of the placenta. Being attentive looks different at different phases, as does being calm, as does being competent. So it's really sort of a cookbook. There's a bunch of recipes in the sense of ideas. Try them out. If they work, great. If they don't, that's great. Some people would probably disagree with everything I say. A few small percentage would agree with everything I say. And the vast majority would find some things like, oh, this was really great. And the other was like, it didn't really land for me. So it's
Well,
all, it's
that's
all
true
out
of
there.
everything. And, there's not one approach, one size fits all. But it just sounds like very earnest, hard learned lessons that you're sharing with others. And I think there's a little bit of a void. There are some resources available for dads to be, but not enough. It's two-part, how to support your partner and also how to support your child. And I hope that means that there's another book coming for the first year or something like that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because so much of what I was focused on initially was getting ready for baby. And I sort of missed the plot, and that the first and earliest work I could have been doing, which I learned to do and which I promote, is better connecting with your partner on her journey. You're still you. I really want to encourage the guys out there to stay true to their deeper, what I call their sacred individuality, and root down in that. And then from a more coherent and aware relationship with themselves and their aspirations for what do they want and how do they want to connect with their partner, support her, how do they want to grow into fatherhood, that from the offerings of support and connection and engagement coming from that deep grounded authenticity are just so much more tangible and relevant than the, well, yes, dear, what is it you want? Sure, I'll go do the thing. Like those guys, they're maybe trying their best according to the cultural expectation, but I really want the guys to feel that their unique individual personality and their own or aspirations for fatherhood are being front burnered. And that's what we're starting, and that's what we're investing in, so that they can shine forth their most authentic self, their most engaged, connected, and aspirational sense of who they want to be as partners and as parents.
Well, I wish you were around 20 years ago doing this kind of work when I had my first. I did read a book, but it was too late for the first. And so much like you, I had to keep practicing till I got it right. And I think maybe by the fourth, I had a clue. And then along the way, I became a doula, so I really learned a lot more.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, and I'm also, when I'm working, sometimes I work with dads, and I do, especially the type of dad to be who's intellectually curious and also just wants to be a great partner. There's so much that with a little good information, they can go a very long way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful for you for the work that you're doing. I'm grateful to you for joining us on the podcast and sharing your personal stories and a little taste of what's available. Where can we find you online?
Thanks for having me on the show, of course. And for all the listeners out there, you can find me at www.welcometofatherhood.com. You can go to Amazon. You can find my book in the paperback or Audible version there. I also have ebook and PDF versions on my website, and the video course of Welcome to Fatherhood is exclusively available on the website there at welcometofatherhood.com.
Amazing. David Arrell, thank you very much for joining me. And at home, thanks for listening to the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. For more pregnancy and parenting information, visit us online at informedpregnancy.com.
Doctor, give me the news. I got a